What distinguishes humans from non-human animals must be our ability to exercise reason and understand the difference between truth and falsehood. We know that animals, to a certain degree, understand falsehood because they have been known to trick each other. For example, hens with chicks know that they can trick a predator about to devour their chicks or their eggs by pretending to be injured in the hope of enticing the predator away from the nest. So we may suppose that this idea of truth and falsehood is understood in some degree by non-human animals. There used to be a time when truth was valued and respected and would be used to trump arguments. So you can say, this is racist or sexist or chauvinist or whatever, and then you say, well, but it's true and it justifies everything. And it used to be the case, perhaps it still is, that truth justifies libel. So if you say something and somebody claims it to be defamatory, you can say, well, it's true though, it's true what I said, so I should be allowed to say it. So once upon a time, there was the idea that truth is sacred, but no longer, of course. We're not even sure if you can even say, after saying something, you say, well, but it's true. And, after somebody complains about it being offensive or racist or sexist or whatever, but you can say, well, but it's true. And that justifies it. The truth of the matter is that people are more sensitive now because there are more women in public life and their feelings are more easily hurt. And I guess men care more about the hurt feelings of these women, because the instinct to protect women is innate in them. But it can be slowly removed once they realise that these women that they so gallantly protect are not doing their country any good by taking over the ship of state. Liz Truss might well take over the ship of state from Boris Johnson. And I suppose the men will be confused. They don't know whom they hate more, Liz Truss or some Hindu prime minister. Do they ever wonder what happened to put themselves in this laughable place where the only choice is between a rock and a hard place? Of course, the white men would detest the idea of a Hindu prime minister. But then, many of them would just as much detest the idea of yet another female prime minister and know that it can bode no good. How did we get to this position? when white British men are forced to choose, well, the ones in the Conservative Party are expected to choose between a Hindu and a woman, a warmongering cunt of a woman. It's not true, as so many people like to believe, that if the world were run by women, it would be more peaceful. I'm sure we know women who are troublemakers, who like watching people fight too, who demand that their men avenge insults on their behalves, with their usual phrase, "Are you going to let him speak to me like that? Aren't you going to defend me? What are you for then if you're not going to defend my honour?" And many susceptible men fall for that. And so men are prepared to commit acts of violence at not much effort if the woman is clever and manipulative enough. And now they are in positions of power. I think the most important thing, if you're in a Conservative Party wondering whom to vote for, is to ask yourself whether Rishi Sunak or Liz Truss is more likely to succumb to Harriet Harman's proposal that the government apologise for adopting the offspring, the illegitimate offspring of unmarried mothers. I can predict anyway that once this apology is made, marriage will really be trashed. We know it's, being kicked to the ground. But the coup de grace will be when probably Liz Truss apologises on behalf of governments before she was even born for daring to adopt the bastards of unmarried mothers. I think it's far more likely that Liz Truss is going to do that with a Lib Dem background than Rishi Sunak, don't you? After all, if you're Hindu, you probably have some idea of the Bhagavad Gita, and it's quite stern about the morals of... How does it go? Let me look it up properly. This is chapter 1, verse 41. Bhagavad Gita, the Song of God. So what does it say? It says, the preponderance of vice, O Krishna, the women of the family become immoral, and from the immorality of women, O descendant of Vrishni, unwanted progeny are born. It can only mean illegitimate offspring, bastards. Women occupied a very high status in Vedic society. For families to be religious and societies to be moral, it is necessary that their women be virtuous. According to Manu Smriti, societies where women are worshipped for they are chaste and virtuous, the celestial gods are joyous. Arjun became concerned and started comprehending what would happen to society in the absence of guidance and protection of elders. The women of the family may get misled. Therefore, Arjun said to Sri Krishna that if the women of the family turn towards immorality and commit adultery, they would bear illegitimate children. This would not only destroy peace and happiness of the future generations, but also deprive the ancestors of their Vedic rights. Family traditions will be abandoned and the welfare of society will be at stake. So, this has happened before. When was the Bhagavad Gita written, eh? We can look that up. History repeats itself, said Marx. History enacts itself as tragedy and repeats itself as farce. We keep forgetting the lessons of history and are therefore condemned to relearn these painful lessons again and again and again because we think we're so special and that these rules don't apply to us in the same way that these Christians don't think that the prohibition against idolatry applies to them. And they may still think that because they have the force of arms on their side, they can continue to deny their idolatry and their blasphemy. Date. Now, when was the Bhagavad Gita written? Theories on the date of the composition of the Gita vary considerably. Some scholars accept dates from the 5th century to the 2nd century BCE as the probable range, the latter likely. Much older than the New Testament and the Quran. I'll have to look up when the Torah is supposed to be composed. It'll be 4,000, maybe 7,000 years ago, the Bhagavad Gita. So the Torah was supposed to have been given to Moses on Mount Sinai around 1312 BCE. So the Bhagavad Gita is older, much older than the Torah. Just something to bear in mind. So all this has been happening time and time again. You know, the problem of bastards and not having children within wedlock. Something to bear in mind, that there are more unmarried parents now than there are married parents in the UK anyway. The numbers are certainly electorally significant. And that is why no one running for office is ever going to propose the shaming of sluts. And it means that the problem won't be corrected. No, it won't. And that's why I suppose all these civilizations have fallen. They won't admit that they were ever wrong. They're just going to keep stuffing all these corpses under the carpet until they trip over and fall on their face and break their teeth or break their head. They would rather die than admit that having bastards is a problem. And this has been happening since the Bhagavad Gita, written maybe in the 5th century BCE. Or the 2nd century BCE. It's a long time. But human stupidity and human stubbornness and pride are have unplumbed depths, shall we say. So even now we have a broadly literate populace in the West. They apparently do not understand what I'm saying, or are so corrupt because they are themselves bastards or parents of bastards, and their political classes don't care to correct them, thinking, well, I'll be dead soon. I'm not going to be rocking the boat and correcting anyone in case somebody gets upset at me. And this is why truth is so important, but then it is not a valued thing in the West anymore. It's something to be hidden away. Well, in the way that we might want to guard our modesty by, not showing too much cleavage, not showing too much leg, not showing, not walking around naked. Now, it is interesting to see how far things will go. I mean, can it really be the case that nobody cares? It's quite easy to understand the problem of bastardy, isn't it? Not hard to understand the purpose of a marriage license, being licensed to have sex and children with your spouse. Now, what's the idea of the marriage certificate? So you notice how they use different words to obscure the meaning, to make it sound nicer, I suppose. The marriage license, it sounds like a, dog license? But returning to the subject of this title, it is simply this, that people prefer their own emotions. They want to think they're right. They don't care if they're really right or wrong. They just want to be right. You can't get them to concede that you're right, even though it's blatantly obvious that you are, because these bastards don't give a damn about truth. And no one above them does either. That is a problem. You expect, plebs to not give a damn, who, would be beyond reason. You can't really reason with somebody who's, a pleb who doesn't care about truth, with a defective and corrupt character who thinks he can get away with it for as long as he's got breath in his body, to deny the truth and to say it doesn't matter, and to keep mocking it and to keep asserting his nonsense. But the awful truth is that there is no one above this ignorant, uneducated pleb who goes through life, well, trying to get his way by mocking his superiors, by denying the truth and joking about it. There is only moral relativism and chaotic equality, and that's why perhaps our political classes are not keen to assert their authority, because they're not sure of it. They don't know what's going to happen if they try and correct anyone about anything. Perhaps at the back of their minds they know that nobody would support them, and there would only be apathy or the outraged cries of offended people demanding that they apologize. So Howard says the marriage license is a license to nothing, because the relationship between a woman and a husband is no different under the law to her relationships with any other men. He has no special license. Well, you could create a moral environment in which it is expected that women don't sleep around. I mean, when you think about it, all these, well, we have all these means of surveillance, don't we? I think if we put our minds to it, we could. I mean, I'm not proposing anything stringent. I'm just proposing that if you have any bastards without a license, then you'll be treated as a criminal, a sex offender, and that should be enough to stop people in their tracks, in their fornicating tracks. And if this is the law of the land, then nobody will have an excuse to say, "Oh, I didn't know." And this would be all the sex education that horny teenagers need. And to reinforce this moral regime, you would have public corporal punishment carried out in public places like the village green or the town square or the shopping mall or the high street, or Main Street as they call it in America, where these things are traditionally done. Curiously, nobody will say this. I mean, I'm thinking of Sargon and distributist again. And I know they won't be saying anything, because they are confident of they will be terrified of the outcry if they were to suggest such a thing. But Dave, the distributist, did actually say that the future may be some Abraham-style religion. So I'm not sure if he has any offspring, but we know Sargon has. And what Sargon said was that he used to be a militant atheist, telling even children not to believe in God, but he's changed over the years. And he makes a point of forbidding blasphemy, even though he doesn't believe in God. So that's an interesting development, isn't it? He actually said that he didn't know why he was doing it. He didn't know. And then he sort of said, I don't want my son, to say that my father forbade me from believing in God. So I suppose something at the back of his mind told him that perhaps religion was useful after all. While he couldn't believe in the nonsense of the Trinity, he, he felt that some belief in some benevolent being would help his child, would help his 7-year-old son, Daniel. So we are observing some signs of maturity in the dissident right. But how far does it go? Will it be far enough to get them to talk about religion properly with each other if they're too afraid to talk about it with me, little old me? What's there to be afraid of? I'm only one woman after all. I don't have an army. I don't have a police force. I don't know why everybody's behaving as if I was some kind of monster. I'm only trying to make a point, and the more they don't get my point, or pretend they don't get my point, I guess the more loudly I will bang on their door, wondering what on earth is going on. These so-called men, too afraid to acknowledge the truth of the nature and purpose of religion. Which is but a moral system designed to keep our group in existence and apart from others to help us deal with our external and internal enemies. But it seems they prefer to blame Jews and Muslims who have the better religion. Certainly Jews and Muslims speak more clearly and have more purpose in life as they go about their business, at least with their preoccupations. You know it's leading somewhere. So it's quite a job. It's quite a job. Getting people to take your point. So sometimes you don't know if they really understood it, but they're just denying it in order to annoy you, or they really don't get it. And you don't know if they don't get it because they're just stupid. They haven't got the, intellectual faculties to understand what it is that you're trying to say, or they're just pretending. So I see that Randall Richardson will be streaming about whether God exists. Here's his title. There's a group of people who are not sure God exists. Can you convince them? So no, I'm not going to do that because it's a waste of time. And anyway, it would go against my agnostic principles, because as an agnostic, I would already know that it is impossible to convince anyone of the existence or non-existence of God if it is their intention to take the opposite view. I'm only saying that the moral position to take on whether God exists is to behave as if we believed, and this means obeying his laws. And that is the only moral position to take. And we already know that atheists will not be around for much longer. We know that atheists have a problem of keeping it in their trousers, and therefore social cohesion in an atheist society is non-existent. You can't get any of them to do anything because they, what atheists do is really worship their own dumb opinions and deny the existence of objective morality or objective truth. That is basically their moral and philosophical position. And they're basically saying that they're not going to pass up any bribe or any sexual encounter because YOLO, you only live once. So the behavior of these atheists is actually very predictable. You can control them easily by threatening and bribing them. And recently I discovered something else about these atheists and nihilists who don't believe in anything, who believe that it is their right and their personal duty to have as much fun as possible and die happy, having explored all they can explore in the way of sexual experiences or whatever. So there'll be nihilists. They have no principles. They can't be trusted with anything, and that's how they roll. And this is what Western civilization has produced, and that's why they can't do anything. They can't cooperate to deal with their internal and external enemies. They are completely helpless because they are so easily controlled, like donkeys with a carrot and a stick. And even now, they deny that not having a functioning moral system is a problem, as they continue to pump out bastards that they don't parent properly, and they will be living in a society where chaos and criminality is the order, as well as incompetence and corruption in the government. And they are literally unable to do anything about it because, well, I know this because they can't even discuss the subject. And I've tried. I raise a subject, they sort of know where it's going, and they leave the room, so to speak. And you can see in their faces that they only hope to die before the shit hits the fan. That's about as much as they hope to achieve in their miserable lives. They just want to avoid the correction, and the most they can say is there will always be in England, and there will be people living in England, whatever race they are, whatever their level of legitimacy or criminality. Low standards, sufficient unto the day. It's not quite the attitude that you would expect to maintain a civilization, but that's the kind of attitude you would expect from, some unmarried mother living hand to mouth on a day-to-day basis, and this is their short-termist worldview. And of course, they will take any pleasure as it comes, with no thought for the future, because they don't believe in an afterlife. So in this degraded state, you cannot expect anything of Western civilization. So these dissident right YouTubers may whinge and moan, complain and cop. But soon their voices will be silenced by the grave. But this is what you would expect of non-human animals who will have no civilization to maintain. They will take their pleasure as it comes, not pass up any opportunity for a bit of mating or gluttony or sloth and not be interested in discussing ideas at all. It is a waste of potential, of course. Humans are supposed to be better than that. And I think having a religion empowers you to think more in the abstract, because they will see life as a game of clocking up brownie points in order to, be in good standing with God, when they pop their clogs. And if they don't believe in it, then they would be measuring the success of their life in a different way. So the wealthy would obviously measure their success in terms of numbers and, on their bank account, and the poor ones will just have to measure their success in the numbers of sluts they get to fuck and the sexual experiences they might have enjoyed, and that would be the sum total of their pathetic achievements. In the meantime, talking to Western men is like talking to uncomprehending cats. Hopefully, the immigrants, particularly the Muslim ones who are still capable of feeling shame, will understand what it is that is needed to set the ship of state aright. Because their honour and their DNA is at stake. If a white Western man just hasn't got it in him to defend a principle or to assert a truth because he's too afraid of his immoral women, then perhaps immigrant males might wish to do so on their behalf. Or maybe not. Maybe they will just assimilate into the moral sewage of the matriarchy.